Hello, and welcome back to a Hush Hideaway. I've been really excited for this one for quite some time. I'm going to try and not let it take too awfully long and still pack in as much as I can, but this one might be taking just a little bit longer than our normal episodes. Today, we're going to be going over one of the most popular, in some opinions, a folklore that has lasted for centuries, now by many different names, but as most commonly heard of as the mermaid. Yes, this episode is about mermaids. Now, there are many different forms of this type of creature in all different mythologies. So first, let's go over the different forms and names. First, what are mermaids? Well, by definition, mermaids are mythological half-human sea creatures. The head and trunk of a woman and the tail of a fish, often told to be very beautiful. Now, the word mermaid comes from Middle English, the compound of the word being mer, meaning sea, and maid. Now, with that being said, many different creatures do fall into this umbrella term, mermaid. All right. But some might also know mermaids as the name of sirens. Now, I'm sure that gets kind of familiar to you, but they're not actually what you think they are. Now, sirens are originally from Greek mythology and are known from luring sailors by their enchanting voices to the ultimate doom. But sirens were actually said to have the head of a woman and other bird-like features, including legs and wings. So in modern day interpretation, they are common symbols for danger and temptation. Now, sirens were later changed into tail-like creatures that we know them to be as today during the Christian era, due to the relation to their alluring song. Later, they were said to be seen with mirrors and combs, and according to Christians at the time, was a form of vanity. But we'll get back to that later. Now, selkies are another name of a sea-biting shapeshifters based around the Northern Isles of Scotland. Now, selkies are mythical creatures that can shapeshift into a seal and into attractive and seductive women by taking off or putting on their seal skin. Alvin or otter manner are found in the Netherlands, and they are shape-shifting mermaids that change by using their otter skins. Blue men of the Minch, they are poetic sea wreckers known for their tragic tales. Finn folk are described as sorceress shapeshifters from Orkney folklore, known for their dark and mysterious nature. They appear as tall, thin figures with gloomy faces, often wearing fins that resemble fish. Finmen are crafty magicians who can row between Norway and Orkney, while Finn wives are typically known as beautiful mermaids seeking human husbands. They are known for shape-shifting abilities, which allow them to transform between human and sea creature forms, and they often abduct humans for servitude or marriage. Now, there's also a Merrow from Irish mythology, often known as beautiful women from the waist up, and fish-like creature from the waist down. They are also described as having long green hair, webbed hands, and shimmering scales on their fish-like tails. The Knock also has other various forms of the name, but they are said to be malevolent freshwater spirit of a handsome young musician man that lures women, although some report that they were not malevolent. The Shellycoat is a mythological creature from Scottish folklore, known for its mischievous and somewhat malevolent nature. Undines are from ancient Greece and often known as beautiful female water spirits with long flowing hair, shimmering skin that resembles the surface of the water, and eyes that reflect the colors of the sea. Kelpies are actually horse-like shifting water spirits known from the lochs of Scotland. And Era is a mermaid-like creature with dark hair and dark eyes of the river, based on Brazilian mythology. And the last one I'm going to name is from a Japanese folklore, the Ninjin. It is an aquatic humanoid, whale-like and mermaid-like creature supposedly inhabiting the subantarctic oceans. Now, this wasn't even all the different variations of the mermaid. There was so many more, but they're all unique in their own ways. So today we're actually just going to focus on one we already kind of talked about. We're going to focus on the siren. What they were before and what they changed into, how they ended up changing into the fish-like creatures that we all know them as, or why we call sirens and mermaids very coercively. So sirens actually originally for ancient Greek mythology, as I said earlier, and they were half human, half bird-like creatures with alluring voices that led sailors to the ultimate death. They were known to be from the islands surrounded by rock and cliffs. Now, sirens continue to be used as a symbol of danger and temptation, embodied by women throughout Christian art in the medieval era. Now, it was also used as a slang for women that is both very attractive and dangerous. Now, the origin of the name sirens in Greek is debated and remains uncertain, but scholars have proposed several theories. However, one prominent interpretation connects the name to the Greek word Sira, I might be pronouncing that wrong, most likely Seira, meaning rope, cord, or noose. Now, this suggests that the sirens bound, entwined, or ensnared their victims with their enchanting song, much like a rope pulling sailors towards their doom. This etymology aligns well with the role as a temptress. Now, based on the stories, their personalities varied. The sirens were a deadly bunch. There's no argument there. When you think siren, you definitely think of deadly, right? According to Homer, they bewitched any mortal who approaches them. They sit in a meadow. Men's corpses lie heaped up and all round them, moldering upon the bones as the skin decays. A search of the seafloor around their island would turn up entire ships wrecked as they had tried to get to the sirens, yet the sirens may have not been evil by nature. Few stories described the temptresses physically attacking humans, which leaves to the possibility that their songs weren't designed to kill. According to Nonius, when a sailor hears the siren's song and bewitched by the melody, he is dragged into a self-chosen fate too soon. Falling into the net of a melodious fate, he forgets to steer, quite happy. So if sirens aren't cold-blooded killers, what motivates them to sing? Well, these are stories, but before the sirens took up their deadly singing career, they suffered several setbacks in life. They were cursed by both Demeter and the Muses and exiled to a small island where they were forced to live alone. Now, it's possible that the sirens sang to avenge the wrongs against them. Abused by life, they decided to become monsters and destroyed the lives of others. It's also possible that the sirens sang to express their grief. As they told Odysseus, "We know of all the sorrows in the wide land. We know all things that come to pass on the fruitful earth." This truth was something that they needed to share, even if it was more painful than mortals could bear to hear. Finally, the sirens may have been desperately lonely and used their songs to tempt men to join them on their island. Although the island was littered in human remains, there were no signs that the sirens killed the men. Instead, the men might have died of starvation after keeping the sirens company for several weeks. Now, they're also known to have special abilities. So the sirens are famous for their high, clear singing voices, which were so full of emotion that they drove men insane. They also accompanied their voices with musical instruments, lyres, flutes, and pipes. They also had, or claimed to have, prophetic abilities, which lent depth to the lyrics of their songs. Legends about sirens. So Persephone, handmaidens before the Sirens became the Sirens, they were mortal girls who served the goddess Persephone. These lovely girls trailed behind Persephone when she visited her favorite meadows to pick flowers. They sang her sweet they sang to her in sweet voices and played instruments to please her. When Persephone was abducted by Hades, the loyal handmaidens volunteered to help look for her. Dimitri gave them golden wings so they could fly over the earth searching for Persephone. But the search was vain, since Persephone had been imprisoned into the underworld. Heartbroken over the loss of their daughter, Dimitri lashed out against the innocent handmaidens who had failed to bring good news back from their search. She cursed them, declaring that they would stay in their bird form until someone passed by their songs without stopping, at which point they would die, and then she banished them to an uninhabited island. There was competition with the Muses. So after some time, Hera came to visit the Sirens on their lonely island. She had heard praise for their songs, full of beauty and anguish, and she was not disappointed by the live performance. So the goddess decided to give the girls a challenge. She invited them to enter a singing contest against 9 muses. After consulting together, the Sirens agreed to enter the contest. Of course, they had heard of the Muses' legendary music, but they also knew that the power of their own songs. The competition produced some of the most haunting music that the Greeks had ever heard, with the Sirens pouring all of their arresting heartache into the music. Still, the Muses, goddesses of music, where the Sirens were mere mortals, won the competition. To celebrate, they plucked out the Sirens' feathers and made crowns for themselves, and the Sirens returned to their island in humiliation. Now comes to the story of the voyage of Odysseus. Now, during his 10-year voyage home, Odysseus passed by the island where the Sirens lived. Fortunately, he had been warned of their powers ahead of time, so as his ship drew near the rocky coast, he ordered all his sailors to plug their ears with beeswax. Odysseus, however, was determined to hear the legendary song of the Sirens and live to tell the tale. With his goal in mind, he ordered all the sailors to tie him up to the mast of his ship, and then gave orders that he should not be untied no matter how much he begged or threatened them. The nervous sailors agreed to tie up their captain. No sooner were the ropes knotted than Odysseus heard voices, unimaginably high and clear, calling to him. Odysseus was understandably flattered, and he began to wish to meet the beautiful woman who sang so sweetly to him. After a few more lines of the siren music, Odysseus was in a frenzy to be released. He raved at his sailors, who fortunately could not hear him since their ears were full of beeswax, and strained at his ropes until they cut into his skin. But the ship drifted on, and in an hour, the island was behind them, and the spell subsided. After Odysseus passed the island, the Sirens hurled themselves into the sea and died, making him the last person to hear their bewitching music. So, according to the two stories, put them together, someone finally passed by, heard their songs, and did not come to them, so they were allowed to die. Now, early Christian to medieval time in the Book of Enoch. According to the ancient Hebrew Book of Enoch, the women who were led astray by fallen angels will be turned into sirens. But by the 4th century, when pagan beliefs were overtaken by Christianity, the belief in literal sirens was discouraged. The siren is described as a beautiful courtesan or prostitute who sings pleasant melodies to men, and it is a symbolic voice of pleasure in the preaching of Clement of Alexandria, the 2nd century. Later writers such as Ambrose, 4th century, reintegrated the notion that the siren stood as a symbol for worldly temptations and not an endorsement of Greek mythology. Now, as time progressed, the depiction of sirens evolved significantly. By the Hellenistic period, sirens began to portray more consistently as aquatic beings rather than bird women. This transformation can be traced throughout various myths. The myth of Odysseus in Homer's epic, the Sirens are depicted in their bird-like forms, but later interpretations, such as those by Ovid, emphasized their sea-dwelling nature. The Sirens in artistic representations from the Renaissance onwards often showed sirens as mermaid-like figures, highlighting their connection to the sea. They were then now more closely known to what we know as mermaids, some very beautiful in nature and others very malevolent. Mermaids are known for their beauty and song. Some even have romances with humans, and some prefer that of humans rather than their own kind. But would that even be what was once known as a siren? So many different accounts and different variations of the mermaid. Some of the very same attributes that were given to the siren originally have passed down into the mermaids we know today. maybe it is that sirens ended up evolving eventually. Or maybe when they jumped into the ocean, they didn't die, but instead they changed to live on with their sad songs. And it was just a joke played on them by the gods. Or possibly they did lure men to their island and they mated. Evolution finding a way to let the species survive, creating what we know as the mermaids today. Now, sirens are everywhere nowadays. In many different stories, poems, movies, all different kinds of literature and myths throughout the world, throughout time even. Some even as famous as like William Shakespeare. Sirens are used in all different forms and seem to still have a great hold on all of us. Even the logo for the beloved coffee chain Starbucks, and it is a two-tailed siren. It's a siren holding her two tails. Now, the origins of the Starbucks symbol can be traced back to maritime mythology. The twin-tailed mermaid, or siren, has been a symbol of maritime trade and exploration since ancient times. In Greek mythology, sirens were known to lure sailors with their enchanting songs and beautiful appearance. The Starbucks symbol pays homage to this mythological creature, symbolizing the allure and seduction of their coffee. The temptation you cannot, tempt. Like you have to have it. You have to have it. So that's why they have a siren as their logo. Kind of funny, huh? So are or were sirens real? Are mermaids just an evolution of a siren? And if not, what is that enchanting song so many claim to hear in the empty open ocean? Maybe next time you're on a cruise or on a rocky island, keep an eye and an ear out. Or don't. You never know. It may be the last thing we hear of you. So today's word of the day is finitude. It is a noun. It's the state of having limits or bounds. Now, this word originated from the Latin finis, meaning end, and in English, finitude refers to the state of having limits. Finitude is a popular topic across many areas of academia, including philosophy, psychologically, art, and economics. There is an intellectual study between what is known or accepted entity in the human's experience at a given time. The finitude is what's possible, even if the human brain can imagine it. So to put it in something that would make more sense, someone can say the fussy toddler's mother was quickly reaching the finitude of her patience. And to move on, this week's Fragment of Fixation is a very popular movie right now on Netflix, but I gave in and watched it, and it's actually a kids movie. It's called K-Pop Demon Hunters. The storyline is surprisingly very good, and the soundtrack is even better. If you haven't watched it and decided not to, maybe because you're not into that kind of show, I suggest at least giving it a try. You might be pleasantly surprised. And last but not least, if you like this episode or any of our others, please give us a like and share. If you really want to help us out, please leave us a good review. The good reviews help us push this podcast out to other people just like you and me who might like this. Make sure to check out our website at ahushedhideaway.com for all our up-to-date information, social media, and our newsletter. So today's quote is from Albert Einstein, something that stuck with me. The only sure way to avoid making mistakes is to have no new ideas. Until next story.